Yeah,
So, Lua then, is that your primary language?
that is, yes.
Okay, okay. And so give us sort of a background then of CBEffects. Tell us, kind of like where it came from and that sort of thing.
Okay, so I was just browsing around one day, and I came across this sample in the sample code. This was quite a while ago. That was a particle sample, and it was just these green squares that were floating around. And somehow that just really resonated with me. I thought, wow, that's really cool. And then I said, hey, I wonder if I can write my own. So I wrote my own, and it was not so good. But then from there on, I was still interested in it, so I just kept working and working at it, and polishing and adding and taking away, until finally there it was. And I sent it out to Ed and another guy, and they were my first beta testers.
Oh, excellent. Well, Ed, I didn't know that. I didn't know you were one of the first beta testers.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I do recall having the conversation and reviewing it and being very enthusiastic. I didn't know you were 12 or 13 at the time. Otherwise, I probably would have started crying. But honestly, though, yeah, I was very impressed with the quality of it and the scope and the what you're trying to do with it. So.
Yeah, it seems like a very ambitious project.
I just wanted to get a little
early on. Go ahead, though.
No, I just wanted to get a little bit of sense because you were saying it was a couple of years ago. Because that's what blew me. I mean, again, not to harp on your age, but when I saw that you were 15, I said, "Wow, that's really impressive." But what was more impressive to me is I said, "I've been seeing Dusk and CBEffects on the forums for what feels like years." So I go, this isn't, an amazing 15-year-old developer. This is something, I mean, and again, not even just that you were developing something, but you're developing something in a way that is community-minded, transportable to somebody else. So, I mean, so many of us, particularly when we're young, we're writing stuff that's great for us, but the fact that you're already thinking to that next level of packaging it, making it usable for other people is awesome. And again, I don't want to harp on your age, but you're 15 now. This was years ago, correct? Because when did CBEffects and when did Dusk get released in their first versions?
I think I was 13.
Okay.
And Dusk was more recent, maybe another year after that. So.
Okay. But way to go, you. Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say anything more about age, but I do want to say, as just a general development person doing development, that you're a model to other folks in the sense that you just said, hey, this interests me, I can do it, I'm going to share it, and I'm not going to let questions and difficulties stop me, because I wanted to point out, you've got Dusk, CBEffects, Cyan, you've got a number of other projects here.
So it's not just the one then.
Perspective camera system.
Yeah.
I see something here called Crystalline, which looks like a game. And I think you had other projects released that you must have taken down at some time. Is that true?
Yeah, I've gone through several projects, but then the upkeep of them, along with my more major ones, I just had to kind of let them,
languish?
They're still perfectly functional, but I don't, promote them because I can't give one-on-one support like I like to do with my bigger libraries.
Yeah, so you kind of felt like you wanted to release them, and yet just supporting them got to be kind of hard because you felt like, yeah, I can release it, but then it's not as good as I would like it to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The problem is I'm very perfectionistic, so I don't like to release it and say, here it is, but I can't help you with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like to do that all the time. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, Ed, as a library developer, I'm sure that Ed, you understand all the pains that go along with putting that out there and making it available to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. I got some questions, but I want to wait. So you were on a roll?
No, go ahead, because the questions that I have here, are supposed to help spur conversation, and that's where we are. So go ahead.
Okay, so Caleb, I got maybe a hard question. You put a lot of time into this. It's in version 3.0 now?
3.8. 2, actually. I
Okay.
just released 3.2.
Okay. So in this time, I know that we had this conversation early on, and that you mentioned it before, and then you did over time do the work. And the thing I want to talk about is documentation. So documentation. No, I'm not. This is not no pressure. I totally understand. But how much time do you think you put into like coding versus trying to document this?
Well, that's not so good. I mean, I love to code on it, and I don't so much like to do documentation. So one time there was a pretty good set of documentation for it, for the parameters and all that. But then it kind of
That's
stopped
stale.
happening.
Yeah.
So
Well, you got out of sync, right?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So would
I'm,
you say? Go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead.
planning on doing the documentation at some point.
Okay.
Because
This is not to pressure you, Caleb.
yeah.
Don't feel pressure. I'm not saying go do documentation. Go do documentation. What I'm saying is, do you find it true that no matter how hard you work on the documentation, you know, your changes sort of outstrip your documentation, and you find yourself looking back and saying, "Oh, that's not how it works anymore."
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Because I write the documentation and then it changes in some way, and then I deprecate it like in the Git commit message, but then I never put it in the documentation until eventually the documentation has a whole parameter that doesn't even work anymore.
Mm-hmm. So let me put a bug in your ear. I'm gonna put. Do you know what I mean when I say put a bug in your ear?
No.
I say that on the show, and people are like, "I don't know what you're saying." Put a bug in your ear means make you think about something, give you a thought, something like that. So if you were a C programmer, you'd be familiar with a tool out there, which name I can't remember right now. But basically, what it is you put little documentation snippets in the header, and then you can run it through this tool and produce like web pages and other output sources. And if anybody remembers the name of this tool, just yell it out. But I, too, have this problem with the documentation. And you might think in the future of, instead of trying to write documentation as a standalone document, is add little comments at the top and use a tool like that and then just generate it. It'll never be as good as like a manual, but it's far better than nothing, and it's easier to maintain because it's right next to your code.
Is there a tool like that, Ed? Is there something that...
Does anybody remember the name of it?
I came across...
I'll look it up while we are talking, and I'm not talking, and see if I can recall it.
Yeah, I came across a JavaScript doc tool the other day for something else that I was working on, and I was like, this would be amazing because you put all your comments in, and then the tool just sucks all those comments out and formats them into documentation. That would be awesome if we had something like that.
Yeah, because writing documentation sucks.
Well, like you said, it just changes all the time. Everything just changes.
You know what?
Are you speaking about LuaDoc?
Well, yeah, LuaDoc is one of the ones I've looked at, but that's not the one I'm thinking of.
Almost like a do press kit type of thing, which is different, but
this is old school. It's been around for like 10 years.
Caleb and Ed, both. This question kind of goes to both of you. Have either of you ever thought about collaborating with someone to help you do the documentation, or is that too much effort?
I just haven't ever thought of that.
Because it's all up on Git, it's all kind of like not necessarily. Well, I guess it's open source in the fact that everybody can see the source. So as you make these comments in the commits and stuff like that, would that be something that obviously the person would have to be committed and interested enough to spend their time, but it just seems like it would be a great way of sharing the load.
Mm-hmm. I got an answer if you don't, Caleb, but go ahead.
I don't have an answer. I've just never thought about that.
My answer is one, I have trouble letting go of ownership. Complete control. I'm a control freak when it comes to things that I write. Two, I would have to very much trust that they would not, like if it was an open source Git and people could modify it, I'd have to trust that they wouldn't like hose it up. I know you can go back and roll back the changes. So I've considered it though. I've considered completely, for example, opening up SSK to people to make all their own changes and add new content and extend it alongside me. It's just managing that is how do you do it? It's like extra work.
Yeah, it could turn into a project. I mean, I've heard plenty of open source conversations where people say they spend time managing the commits and merging the changes and all that kind of stuff. The administrative pieces of that are just as much time consuming as it is getting the help to do the work.
Yeah.
So, okay, just curious.
And I can only speak for myself here too, but it is totally worth noting that this stuff is up on Git. I don't believe you're charging for it. You say you accept donations, which in my book gives you a pass on the documentation thing. You know, I'm not paying you for it, so, you know, documentation's great, but I don't have a, you know, I can't, don't let anybody give you any guff on that, you know what I mean?
I'm perfectly happy to give him guff.
except for Ed. Let Ed give you guff.
Right, Sergey? Sergey's like, shut up, Ed.